This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democratic Socialist Congresswoman from New York's 14th District. Back in December 2019, the House of Representatives voted on whether to impeach President Donald Trump over a phone call with the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky. The two articles of impeachment were for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, and the votes for and against were largely split down party lines. However, Congresswoman and then presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii voted present on both articles. And while Gabbard's vote wasn't make or break in any way for the Democrats, Ocasio-Cortez publicly went after Gabbard, saying to reporters, "Whenever we have a vote, we should vote yes and we should vote no." And this is one of those rare times that I will agree with AOC. Personally, I think that voting present is a cop-out. Congressmen are not paid to sit on the fence. It's yes or no. AOC also went on to say, "Today was very consequential, and to not take a stand one way or another on a day of great consequence to this country, I think it is quite difficult." And then added, "We are sent here to lead." But then, in May 2021, the House voted on a bill that would, among other things, allocate $1.9 billion in emergency funding for Capitol security. However, the bill was in danger of not passing in the House. At the time, there were 214 Republicans and 216 Democrats with 5 vacant seats. And these 6 progressive Democrats opposed the funding because of their so-called stance on defunding the police. When it came time to vote, Cori Bush of Missouri, Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, and Ayanna Pressley voted no. But Democratic leaders were able to negotiate with Rashida Tlaib of Michigan and Jamal Bowman and Ocasio-Cortez of New York, and ultimately get them to vote present. So much for standing up for your convictions, huh? Furthermore, I was under the impression that AOC was against voting present, and that whenever Congress has a vote, that it's their duty that members should vote yes or no. Anyway, I should also mention that these two Republicans, Daniel Webster of Florida and John Carter of Texas, didn't even bother to vote. So instead of the bill failing 214 to 212, it passed 213 to 212. So thanks a lot, guys. And that brings us to HR 5304. The bill would extend government funding and raise the debt limit. This bill included $1 billion in funding to help replenish Israel's air defense system known as the Iron Dome. Now, Republicans were not going to vote for the bill because they refused to raise the debt limit. And then there were a handful of progressive Democrats who also voiced their opposition to the bill because of the Iron Dome funding. So when it looked like those Democrats could derail the bill, Democratic leadership scrubbed HR 5304 and basically replaced it with HR 5305. It was the same bill, but without the Iron Dome funding. And without that funding, it guaranteed that every Democrat would vote for it.
On this vote, the yeas are 220 and the nays are 211. The bill is passed.
So with the successful removal of the Iron Dome funding from the bill, progressives celebrated their win. But unfortunately for them, they didn't get a lot of time to celebrate. Because 2 days later, HR 5323 was introduced. It was a supplemental bill to provide $1 billion to the government of Israel to replenish the Iron Dome defense system. Despite overwhelming support for the bill, several progressive Democrats and members of the so-called squad, who are generally anti-Israel, voted against the bill. Now, AOC's no vote was not going to torpedo the bill, but she voted no anyway because she was standing by her principles, even if she's not exactly sure what she's talking about.
I also think that what people are starting to see, at least in the occupation of Palestine, is just an increasing crisis of humanitarian condition.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine. What did you mean by that?
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas and places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to their housing and homes.
Do you think you can expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also just I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue, you know?
Yeah, we know, Congresswoman. We know. Now, here's where it really gets fun. As the House vote came to a close, there was some unexpected drama on the floor. Here you see House Speaker Nancy Pelosi speaking to Catherine Clark and Bonnie Watson Coleman. Then Debbie Dingell and Pramila Jayapal step into frame, and then so does AOC, who looks upset, and Jayapal gives her a hug. Then AOC makes hand gestures toward Pelosi, but Pelosi is ignoring her and still talking to Clark and Watson Coleman. And here, AOC wipes her eyes with her hand. Then the gavel comes down, and AOC and the others raise their hands towards the Speaker pro tempore, indicating that they need more time. And that hand waving finally gets Pelosi's attention, but only for a moment. Then Pelosi bends back down and continues to speak to Clark and Watson Coleman, completely ignoring AOC's drama. Then Cori Bush and Sheila Jackson Lee enter the fray, and AOC again waves her arm to get the Speaker pro tempore's attention in an effort to ask for more time. Then Pelosi steps away to talk to Maxine Waters, who, as you can see, isn't wearing a mask. Nancy Pelosi selectively enforcing her own house rules. I know you're shocked. Eventually, AOC walks to the front to change her vote from nay to present. And moments later, the vote tally was read.
On this vote, the yeas are 420, the nays are 9, with 2 recorded as present, 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed.
Then, 6.5 minutes later, AOC is comforted by Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Now, I don't understand why anyone feels sorry for this child. They're all hugging and comforting her, when instead, they should be telling her to grow the up. I mean, imagine getting that upset over a missile defense system whose sole purpose is to protect innocent civilians. That's insane, right? The next day, AOC released a statement in an effort to explain her vote and why she was upset. Yesterday, the House called to the floor a rushed $1 billion supplemental military funding bill for Israel's Iron Dome defense system. I want to be clear with our community that I am opposed to this bill, but ultimately cast a present vote. So let me get this straight. AOC is deeply opposed to the bill, but ultimately didn't vote against it. What? The reckless decision by House leadership to rush this controversial vote within a matter of hours and without true consideration created a tinderbox of vitriol, disingenuous framing, deeply racist accusations and depictions, and lack of substantive discussion on this matter. In AOC land, a bill that passes with 420 votes is controversial. Next, she revealed, I personally had a call with the House Majority Leader to request a 24-hour stay of the vote so that we could do the work necessary to bring down the temperature and volatility, explain our positions, and engage our communities. AOC could have engaged with her community for the rest of her life, and she still would have been opposed to the bill, so give us a break, honey. Then she complained that her request to push back the vote was summarily dismissed. Not only was the request dismissed, but despite the House having almost 8 straight hours of votes yesterday, this vote was chosen to be the first, despite being one of the most controversial. So AOC was complaining that the process was rushed and unfair, and Majority Leader Steny Hoyer shot her down. And on top of that, Pelosi straight up ignored her like a boss. And now, AOC's butthurt about it. So that brings us to the big question. Why did she change her vote from nay to present, and then go against her past statements about being sent to Congress to lead and only vote yes or no? Well, AOC won't say. To those I have disappointed, I am deeply sorry. To those who believe this reasoning is insufficient or cowardice, I understand. This is an understatement. Her reasoning couldn't be more insufficient, because she doesn't actually explain why she changed her vote from no to present. But she does talk about why she cried on the floor of the House. Yes, I wept. I wept at the complete lack of care for the human beings that are impacted by these decisions. I wept at an institution choosing a path of maximum volatility and minimum consideration for its own political convenience. No, she wept because she didn't get her way, and she wept because she realized that as a Democratic Socialist in Congress, she holds no power or influence whatsoever. Sad, really. The only thing she does hold, though, is the special honor of being Congress's biggest drama queen, and no one can take that away from her. At least not until the midterms. Anyway, that's it for now. As always, I hope to see you next time. If there is a next time.